in a sane world, wouldn't academia be 50-50? And why do you keep banning conservative professors and not hiring them? Why do you use ideology as a litmus test? And I can tell you, I've been on committees where they do that, and I've been a victim of that in my past. So Trump is saying we're just going to try to have people be empirical and disinterested. We're not going to let you do that anymore. If you want federal money, now you can do it all you want. But you're not going, if you're Stanford University, you're not going to put on your website that 9% of the applicants that were accepted were white males when they make up 34% of the demographic. So they've destroyed it. And I think now the biggest thing I'm noticing about wealthy elites of all persuasions, they don't want their kids to go to Stanford or Yale or Harvard. They're sending them to Vanderbilt, Clemson, Texas A&M, University. Southern universities are big Midwestern places, University of Michigan, they're left wing, but they don't feel they're crazy like Columbia or Harvard. They don't beat up Jews, or they don't tear down stuff, or they don't drive federal judges out of the law school. They don't rough up people. So if you say, well, we're going to be DEI. We're the University of Chicago, and our PhD program in English is not going to let anybody in unless they study black studies. And that was what they said in 2021 and 2. So you do that, and then all of a sudden you got these students. It's not because they're black. It's just that when you make that a criterion, and these universities did, and not GPAs or test scores, then the faculty says, well, wait a minute. I was all for that, but now these guys are in my class, and I'm going to be called a racist if I grade like the way I used to, because they come out of high school not as well prepared, because their test scores and GPAs they're not as competitive. And so what do? Well, I watered them down. I'm not going to die on the altar of diversity. I don't have any principles. I just give them A's. And then when you give them A's, and then they go out in the real world, and then you start to see, I'm starting to see it right now when you talk to people. Victor, today's Stanford student is not Stanford student 10 years ago. If we hire these people, they don't have good communication skills. They do not speak well. They do not know anything, and they go right to HR and complain. So we're not going to do it. I heard that about 100 times from employers.
Universities were once about sharpening minds, but today they've become ideological factories where standards collapse and politics replaces merit. Employers see it, parents see it, and society feels it. And when campuses teach that ideology outranks truth, that mindset doesn't stay confined to the classroom. It shapes media, culture, and politics. So when tragedy struck with Charlie Kirk's assassination, the same habits played out on a national stage. Excuses, deflection, and a refusal to face reality. Watch how that unfolded.
So they took out somebody in a political assassination, and then they compounded it, they being the forces of the left. And then they compounded it with all of these two things they did afterwards. They spoke ill of the dead, which was a civilizational taboo, and they made fun of it. And we had that African-American young student at Texas Tech where she started doing a song about killing him, and then another African-American young guy bent over like he was making fun of the way he had been shot. Then we had a lot of trans people going on, and then we had major actors, military officer, everybody started to weigh in that he was an evil person and it was good that he died. And so at that point, I think a lot of people said, half the country said, I'm done with these people. I'm done with elite education. I'm done with Hollywood. I'm done with the left. I'm not going to put up with it anymore. They always weaponize everything. They run the institution. I'm done with them. And they started to make their voices heard. And then independents, who had really never dealt with their quasi-allies on the left, started to look at the left. They said, oh my God, these people are soulless, heartless people. Whatever you think of him, they're rejoicing in his death. And then the narrative started. There's a lot of them. So somewhere in La La Land to the left, there's a command central bunker. And somebody does the day's talking points, right? The narrative. And the politically correct version. And then they issue it out to everybody. DNC, ABC, CBS, NPR, PBS, MSNBC, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times. They all get an NPR. So the first narrative. Well, we don't know who did it. There's no evidence that anybody did it. Well, there was a lot of evidence. The DA had already started to enunciate and outline all of the gist of the text messages. They were quoting the parent. One of the parents said he'd made a sharp move to the left. They had this thing where he was quoted saying he hated Charlie Kirk. Well, that collapsed as the evidence came out. He said, I'm planning to do this. And Friday, September 10th was mentioned in his chat group coming up. They were going to get somebody. So that collapsed. And then it was, well, he's crazy. He's just deranged. Well, he may have been deranged, but he had the potential to be an honor student. He was in college for a semester. And he wrote on the casings trans messages and anti-fascist, I mean by that Antifa messages, and then cruel messages. So he was premeditated. And the roommate, for all of his puritanical, well, I'm in shock, and he's cooperating. Well, he wasn't quite, because from the moment the shot was fired, very soon afterwards, he learned it. And in that textual correspondence, it was clear that he saw or knew that Tyler Robinson was engraving bullets, and he didn't come forward. We're going to find out a lot that the noble trans partner was not so noble. But in any case, that second narrative that he was crazy collapsed. Then there was the third one. The gun did it. It's the gun. It just walked onto campus and shot him. We have to outlaw all guns. That was the AOC squad, but Jasmine Crockett. Every time she opines, she reveals a new element of her ignorance. I had no idea how ignorant she is. First thing she said was it was an assault weapon. No, you know what an assault weapon is? It's an automatic firing rifle where you put your finger on the trigger and you don't let up. And it fires at a rate of anywhere from 200 to 500 bullets, a minute, depending on the type of gun and how big the magazine is. But semi-automatic, you have to let up. This was a hunting rifle. Right up in my upstairs, I have one. It's a Springfield, but it's basically a 30-06 bolt action, but without the scope. So then she said, it was a 150-yard shot. It was only MAGA people could do that because they're good. Jasmine, anybody can take the 30-06 as I have, and with a peep sight, no scope. He had a scope. Go lay down in a prone position, shooting downhill, and you can shoot pretty easily a bottle at 150 yards. It's not hard to do.
Charlie Kirk wasn't just a personality. He was influence, organization, and fearlessness, precisely the mix that agitates those who rely on narrative control. After his assassination, the responses told the story. First denial, then he was crazy, then it was the gun, then the ritual attempt to pin it on MAGA. Anything to avoid admitting the political hatred in plain sight. That cascade of excuses didn't just fail. It exposed how far our institutions will go to protect a storyline and how many Americans are finished playing along. If you value honest analysis and real conversations, make sure to subscribe. Hit the like button and share your thoughts in the comments. What did we miss, and what should we tackle next? Your voice makes this community stronger. Let's keep pushing for the truth together.